webinar on the ahas and lessons learned from recent customer success conferences that were held in London and Boston, in which Jason Whitehead, our Tuns CEO, presented at both of those conferences. My name is Jen McLean-Rogan. I am the VP of Client Success here at Tuns, and I'll be moderating the call today. This is just a 30-minute webinar, so we'll try to move quickly and get to as many of your questions as possible. For those of you who are new to Tuns, just a little bit of who we are. We have been providing expert training and consulting services to SaaS buyers and providers around the world since 2006. And our mission is to make sure that both are successful in achieving their desired business outcomes from technology. And we do that with our proven strategies and tactics, some of which Jason will share during this webinar. A couple of items, just housekeeping items to go over quickly are that the webinar is being recorded. We will have it available for you to replay on www.trytuns.com and our resources page. And if you have any questions, please type them into the questions and answers section in Zoom. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our presenter, Jason Whitehead, CEO of Tuns.
Great, thanks Jen, and thanks everyone for joining us. Really excited to be here. So just to let you know a little bit of background, I presented at the two conferences Jen mentioned. The one in London was Customer Success Europe, which was a fantastic event. A lot of full-day event over right in downtown London with a lot of great speakers and interesting conversations and breakout sessions. And then it was also great up in Boston, which is SuccessCon, part of the Customer Success Association. And in the Boston conference, it's a half-day conference, and in the morning we actually delivered our in-person customer success training to a fairly large group and had some great interactions and great results. So what I wanted to share with you today were sort of some of the big ahas and takeaways from these two events. Both what was presented there, but also conversations that I had with the various attendees, both before and after the events, which was really, really informative. And there's some exciting trends coming up in customer success that I think people will enjoy. The other thing also, just to let you guys know, there's several upcoming customer success conferences by the Customer Success Association. And I'll actually be back in London in September, where I'll be presenting both a session to the group as well as delivering the in-person training again. So keep an eye out for those events if you or anyone you know would like to attend. It's really great fun and really just very good use of time. So with that as a backdrop, I think one of the things that we find all the time that people are always asking about is, let's talk about quarterly business reviews or executive business reviews, and what's working and what's not, and where should people be focusing on those. And there were several great presentations about QBRs and EBRs. I think one of the things that popped out quite well is that a lot of people are sort of having them out of habit, and they don't necessarily know why or how to make them more effective. And more people are questioning, how do we create an executive business review experience that's actually going to add value and really move the relationship forward. So some of the very simple advice was, don't make them dull. People were talking about how they found that with their team members early on, and people were having nice conversations, but really not effective conversations, and they were kind of boring clients, to the point that after one or two, some clients were being hesitant to even give them time and to show up for them. And the other piece that was very interesting is they said initially so many of these conversations were really focusing on the stats and metrics and KPIs, but not really having business conversations. And what one group actually did, I thought was very interesting, is they said, we don't even discuss metrics in our QBRs at all anymore. And instead what they would do is about a week or two in advance, they would share any of the key numerical reporting that was relevant to the clients and KPIs so that the client could actually digest and think about them before the meeting. And then they would just have a line item on there if there were any questions that they had or concerns or things that they wanted to focus on. And they might reference the statistics and the KPIs during the business conversation if it was appropriate, but they would do it in the context of the business impact they were having and the evidence that they had. So I thought that was really a key piece there, was one, to question what's going to be an effective business review and making sure it is a business conversation, and two, not focusing extensively just on statistics and the metrics during those calls. So that seemed to be a bit of a shift in the conversations, had a lot of great energy around that. So that was sort of the first one that we moved on. And then I think the next one that I wanted to talk about was, as you would expect, a lot of discussion around metrics and what metrics should CS teams be focusing on and why, and what are some of the things to watch out for. And one of the things that surprised me that I thought was very interesting is increasingly organizations were being less metric heavy and focused. And they said, we used to have a ton of metrics and we've cut down because there was just too much confusion and not always as relevant. We still have them and we still use them for big things. But they also realized that they can't get obsessed with them that they were in the past, because they were realizing that a lot of the metrics that they have, especially the automatically generated ones, especially from the customer success platforms, they don't tell the whole story. And there were several examples where people were saying they would go through and they would look at their metrics and customers were showing, green across the board, everything that made them think that they were a healthy customer was there, and then they were always shocked when the customer churned and didn't renew or just outright canceled, and they never saw it coming. And one of the presenters who I really enjoyed was Adam Joseph over in London. He's a prolific writer and has a podcast on customer success, and he was describing them as watermelon customers. And by that he means they were green on the outside, all the metrics and KPIs so that they were a healthy customer, but then they were very red on the inside, and only through relationships and conversations with them and the actual subjective understanding by the customer success managers who were working with them did they realize they were a red customer and that they had to do something. So there was a lot of great energy around the watermelon customer and how to identify them and then how to focus on them and what to do with them. So I think something to think about there was really, how do you make sure when you're looking at metrics that you do have a way to capture that knowledge that can only be had through human interaction and not just rely on automation. And that was really a key piece for this. So I think the other piece that came out of through there was that through the use of metrics, it's very nice information, gave you some insights, but it also reminded everyone that you really still need to focus on sort of the root cause issues with customers and not just sort of focus on getting a metric number up, but really understanding what are the business challenges that customers are having and why are they not getting value through your software or your product, whatever it may be. So what really came to bear, and I thought it was interesting, is there were a lot of presentations and growing discussions around user adoption, and really more and more organizations realizing that adoption is really that root cause issue where customers are struggling, and that many organizations, many customer success teams are realizing that they need to do more to help educate customers about how to drive adoption and best practices there, as well as they're realizing that a lot of their internal methodologies as customer success teams are not always effective for customers in terms of addressing the adoption issue. So through a lot of the conversations, what evolved is that the simple truth is that many customers are really not good at driving adoption of technology, and they're really not good at ensuring that their people use it internally in an effective way to achieve a business outcome. So increasingly, what we found is that the customer success teams that were really having the most dramatic impact in terms of driving usage and renewals and expansions were the ones that were really helping their customers through new tools, education, and methodologies around adoption, and less focus on features and functions of the software itself. And that was a pretty profound shift. And a couple of the presenters went into detail of their adoption methodologies of how they engage with customers either pre-sale or immediately after the sale to educate them about adoption challenges and methods, to make sure they have an adoption plan in place, and to make sure that they have responsible and accountable parties on the customer side who will take the actions necessary to drive adoption. And they also have realized that that's an area where they need to invest to help make sure their customers are successful from the get-go. But I think what was also an important distinction there is that people were saying, adoption for adoption's sake isn't going to get you very far. What you really need to make sure you're focusing on is the business outcome that adoption will deliver, and recognizing that, adoption is on the critical path to success and to business outcomes, but it's not the endpoint itself. So really making sure that that even if you had 100% adoption, if the customer is still not achieving their business goals, you're still going to have an at-risk customer. You need to look at that. I think the other piece that more and more organizations were realizing is that not only do they not have an adoption methodology, but their customers don't either. And trying to figure out as they're maturing their customer success practices, what are the things and the tools and the resources they need to bear to help their customers drive adoption and to help the customers do what they can't or won't do for themselves as it relates to adoption business outcomes. And there's really been a tremendous need there. Also, just as a side note, as Jen mentioned, at Tuns, we work for both the buyers and sellers of customers of software. And one of the things I think we're still recognizing is that the approach that customer success teams take to driving adoption and the issues that they're having still doesn't match up with our customers who are the buyers of software, where they're doing much more robust activities and putting more effort and resources into it. So I think there's still a gap there for customer success that needs to be filled. And a lot of that also leads to one of the next pieces. There was, through all of these events and through the networking, there were a lot of questions on staffing and what kind of people make very effective customer success folks. What's the tenure? What's the life cycle? What's the turnover? What do you need to plan for? Who should they report to? And it's been interesting to hear that while the field is so new and it's still evolving, that there's really been an explosion, you would almost say, in terms of the demand for customer success people, even with just a couple of years of experience. And especially in Europe, they were saying how it's very, very difficult to find experienced, qualified people. There's just not a lot of people who've been doing this work for very long since the field is so new. And they're also recognizing that there's a lot of people who get hired into customer success and that tend to be fairly junior in their career or their experience level. And as a result, they sometimes struggle to move outside of their comfort zone. They become experts on the product that they're delivering, so they tend to revert back to where they're comfortable, talking features and functions as opposed to business outcomes. Also, there seems to be a growing recognition within the staffing that many frontline CSMs are not as comfortable or as experienced having interactions and guiding clients, especially working at the senior and executive levels of an organization. And that really a lot of customer success work has to begin there, and that you need to have people that are very qualified and comfortable working at the executive levels when you're initiating a new relationship and explaining roles and responsibility and agreeing how you're all going to work together. In fact, when we've been delivering training to a lot of our customers and a lot of the people that were in the Boston training, there was just a real hesitation or comfort level that was missing there. And so much of the effort needed to be how to get the customer success team to expand their confidence and their ability to lead conversations that will actually move the needle. And it's been very, very interesting. One of the things that we've also found is that some customer success teams are looking at how do they actually either have mentoring programs or hire some more experienced senior level folks to really develop their customer success team and try and move them along so that they progress in their abilities and move up the ladder within customer segments. One of the things that was coming up a lot as well too was the need to invest in training and development for customer success folks. And there was a lot of question of what sort of skills that they need. And a lot of areas like, oh, do they need soft skills? Do they need business skills? Do they need technical skills? Do they need sales skills? And how to have those different types of relationships there with customers. I think another thing that was interesting as it relates to staffing is that since it is such a growing field and getting more competitive, organizations are realizing that just recruiting good customer success team members is not enough, that they also have to put in place sort of retention plans and development plans, but also to plan for staff turnover. And there seemed to be a lot of folks that were saying, we don't even keep people for 2 years in customer success. Sometimes they would get poached to another organization, especially if there was an opportunity for advancement or improvements in salary. But they also found that many organizations found people were coming in through the customer success initially and then moving internally to other departments, so they'd have to keep backfilling them or keep recruiting new folks. So staffing was a huge issue that was taking up a lot of time. And finally, one of the things I thought was very interesting is several several folks said that they, as the leaders of a customer success team, they spend a lot of their time and energy internally trying to develop and coach their staff members, but they were not getting them to move as quickly as they would expect, or the development wasn't there as fast as they would expect. But then when they would have external trainers come in, even saying a lot of the same things that the managers and the CS leaders were saying, there was like an incremental bump in performance pretty quickly. So I think a lot of customer success leaders were realizing that they were struggling to develop their own teams internally, but that when leveraging outside trainers and development efforts, there was a really big impact there. And I think that leads to our fifth and final aha, which is, what are some of the struggles and where are most CS teams struggling? What should they be doing differently and getting better? There were a lot of discussions in this topic, which it's fairly broad. One of the first ones is that there was still such a wide range of definitions of what is customer success and what are the roles and responsibilities for the team and the department. And also a lot of topics around, should they have revenue responsibility for either sales or renewals? Are they account management? Do they get paid commissions? What does that need to look like? And it's still all over the map, but I think one of the things that jumped out is there were a lot of discussions around, if the goal is to have customer success teams to be more strategic and be viewed by the customer as a business advisor, and the often overused term of trusted advisor, there was a perception that having them have commission and sales responsibility went in the face of that and actually hurt their ability to become a trusted advisor and to have a relationship that a customer would listen to. So more and more organizations were realizing that while from a compensation standpoint, they might need to have some sort of group incentive or bonus scheme based on renewals and retentions, they were not having direct commission responsibility or sales responsibility. And it seemed that the folks who didn't have that, they were much more comfortable having that trusted relationship with clients, and even coming to them initially and telling them directly that, my job is to make you successful. I'm not here to sell you anything. Obviously, our company would love to have a relationship with you and for you to see so much value that you keep wanting to renew and expand, but that's not my job and that's not my motivation. And when the CS teams would go and have that conversation directly with customers, especially early on, it paved the way for a more fulfilling relationship and more effective relationship. And that kind of leads to another piece where I think that was kind of an aha, is that increasingly customer success teams were realizing that from the very get-go, they were not setting themselves up to have an effective relationship with their customers. Either the sales folks during the process would set false expectations about what customer success does. They were viewed as a support function or an admin function, but they really were not being positioned and set up as a way to really be business consultants and business advisors to help companies get the outcomes that they need. And there's a lot of discussion around what are the best ways to change that and how do you interact differently from clients to begin with. And some of the things were practices that people said were very effective was, one, never let the salespeople explain what the customer success team does. Let the customer success team do that and bring them into the meetings where they make their own introduction and explain what they do. Another piece related to that was, when you're initiating the relationship, some CSMs, especially very junior CSMs, tended to go back to their comfort zone of features and functions, and they would have the wrong conversation with the wrong audience. And by that I mean, many times they were getting right into technical details with an executive, as opposed to having a business discussion with that executive and then identifying the other conversations that need to happen down the road to be successful, and asking the executive who was the right person to be in those relationships or to have those conversations. So one of the big takeaways is that CS leaders and teams need to make sure that they're setting up the relationship correctly and that they're helping guide their junior staff members on how to do that. What are the steps? What are the wording, phrasings that you use? What don't you say and don't you do to help set yourself up for success and making sure that relationship will move forward. I think there was also an interesting piece there that a lot of customer success managers and staff were not comfortable tasking their client to do things to help make sure that they are successful. And they viewed their role was to deliver yes to whatever the customer asked for, as opposed to saying to the customer, here's the things that you need to do to be successful, here's the things that I need to do to make you successful. Let's agree how we're going to work together, but be clear that there's responsibilities on both sides. The staff members that had made that shift actually had some pretty good results, and they started to see some really good effects from that. But it took some conscious efforts, and it took a lot of work by the managers and directors to guide their team in how to do that and put in place the tools that needed to happen. And some of that even got down to building out what are checklists for your different initial conversations. Make sure you cover these points. Don't just have a conversation, but have one that's going to move the needle forward. Similarly, another key struggle, that a lot of time was spent on this, in every single organization that was there seemed to share that a bigger challenge than working with customers was working internally and trying to figure out how to have sales and product management and support and training all work well with the customer success teams. And the big aha was that it was that customer success leadership needs to make sure they're spending a lot of time helping to drive that internal alignment across the organization, and helping to make sure that the sales teams understand what customer success does and how to represent their services, in some cases even how to help sell their services, making sure that the leadership was working with executives internally to help them understand that some of the people that customers were selling, or sales folks were selling to, would not be good customers that could ever be successful. So helping to make sure that the salespeople were prioritizing their work on the customers that could actually get value from their product and software, and who would likely be able to be successful enough that they would renew and expand, and not waste time on the folks that were never going to be successful. And that there's just a lot of challenges with that internal alignment that surprised them. From our experience, we've definitely seen where introducing a new organization like customer success shifts responsibilities, shifts skills, shifts activities that need to happen, and you do need to help navigate that internal organizational change within your organization to get it there. On the bright side was those organizations that had started paying attention to and proactively managing the relationship internally with sales and product management, they started to have even much better results, and there was definitely a force multiplier by having those teams in alignment, but it took quite a bit of time and effort. And then, another one for struggles, which I thought was interesting, is many organizations are having a lot of trial and failure with customer success, getting the team set up, having the impact with customers. There were some groups that are on their second or third attempt at setting up a customer success practice. They've turned over leadership. Some organizations, it's been new CS, VP, or director every year for the past 3 years, or even just a matter of months, so the tenure has been very low. There's been a lot of hiring people, but not having the right people in the role, and having a lot of turnover, and just generally not having the impact with customers because of whatever reason, whatever the activities were they were doing with their customers was not achieving that renewal and expansion outcome that they wanted to. So there was no guarantee that success will be successful. And one organization even said, we're just not ready for customer success. And that was after they had invested time and money and effort into staffing and training. So I would urge organizations out there in the AHAs, it's very hard to make customer success work in organizations, and you probably won't get it right the first time. A lot of organizations apparently are not. And then I think the final struggle there that we mentioned is many CS organizations, they just don't have the tools, methods, or training to really drive the adoption of their product, and they're trying to figure out what is it we need to do. Many organizations start with a lot of, or not start with, but they're relying on some of the customer success automation tools to help guide them in what they should do, but I think they were also realizing that automation alone would not solve their customers' underlying problem, and they really need to figure out what are the causes and effect of success or failure for your customers, and what are the specific activities that they need to do, and really investing a lot of time and effort there to make that a reality. So anyway, that was just a very quick overview of 5 AHAs from the different conferences. It's exciting to see the trends in the industry. I want to make sure that we're adhering to our time commitments. But if you haven't attended any of the conferences, there are more coming up, and obviously there's a whole bunch of the big conferences that come up as well too, Pulse and Pulse Europe. Those always are great events as well too. The London conference, I know SuccessCon has one in Denver and Seattle, and I think Oakland as well coming up in the fall. Highly recommend if you can attend any of the events. They're great networking, as well as a lot of the meetups have been very effective as well too. So I'm excited about the trends in the area and excited to see that growing interest in customer success, and really urge people to go through and talk to others there. And one of the things that a final thought that I wanted to share is everyone that I've met at these conferences, whether attendees or presenters, and everyone that I've met via LinkedIn who is interested in customer success has genuinely been very open about sharing ideas and sharing best practices and trying to help other folks working in the industry. It seems to be a very small community, but a very inclusive community. And I urge you, if you have ideas, to reach out to other folks or share things on LinkedIn or at conferences, or if you have questions, to do the same, because I've just met some fantastic people working in the space who really have shared some great ideas, and it's exciting to be part of it. So I think with that as a backdrop, I want to thank you all for attending. We have other webinars coming up as well too that I would encourage you to come and join us for. We have one on June 13th and one on June 27th that are on our website, trytuns.com, under the events page. So please sign up and also share those if there's anyone that you think would enjoy them. And we appreciate your time. Have a great day. Thank you.